My name is Annette Farr. I work for United Intercity Services, Metro. I am the early learning coach. They changed my title to training and curriculum manager. If you've ever been in early learning, you understand that there's a lot of turnover. So when I went in, I was like, okay, I went to school, I went to TCU, I went to Texas Christian University. I spent a lot of money on my degree. I'm not really happy. I think I want to go into teaching. So what I decided to do was even see if I even like children. So what happened was I went in, I got a position as an infant toddler teacher in a program that used to be called Cradles and Crayons. And it was 80% special needs, 20% non-needs. So it was an inclusive environment. And I thought, I'm going to, I think about it now because I think it's really funny. And I think God has a sense of humor. I'll just go in and I'll just be there for a little bit. It'll be okay. I'll be there for 6 months and see if I even really like children. Well, I ended up, God has a funny, he's like, ha, 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 you're going to love it. And I ended up staying for 3 years as the infant toddler teacher, working, then became a director. And so I really knew I wanted to think about teaching, but it was really solidified in working with families, working with the children. We had diverse populations of inclusion and abilities. And so that's what brought me to this field, is that I knew I wanted to have meaningful work that I could do and have a passion for. For me, no matter who they are, our children are our nation's best resource. They are going to be the people who invent, innovate, make changes in the world, and they have to see themselves, and that's done through the people who come before them.
So my name is Christina Medina. I work currently in North Las Vegas. I'm very fortunate to be working as the English teacher and director of student life at the school currently. We're currently in our second year of operation only. Last year was our inaugural year. And I got to help open the doors with the first team. So we're in our second year right now. We're thriving. And it's a Cristo Rey network school. So our students are in a very unique situation where they have a work study job that they attend once a week, 5 times a month, that helps pay for their tuition. I'm a first generation college student, and I attended Loyola Marymount University in California. And while I was there, I was just very involved in service and social justice work. And I found that the way that I can best serve my community is through teaching. I gained a lot of opportunities there. And then after college, I did a year of service where I was a teacher on the south side of Chicago. And from there, I pursued teaching as a career and as a vocation. But before that, it was just all about serving my community. And, when I did my year of service, it was a year of living simply, a year of living in community. So that was the main focus. And now I'm an educator because it's where my gifts lie. And it's the reason why I do it is because I had really great teachers, and what college gave to me was it allowed me to see my potential, to see where my gifts lie, and basically just gave me the opportunity and the space to dream. And that's what I try to do in my classroom, in my school, is to give students the space to learn about themselves, learn about their strengths, and to give them that space to dream.
My name is Enrique, and I basically wear 2 hats in my life. I am a performer and an artist, and I founded a band called Making Movies, and we're based here in Kansas City. My brother has moved to Los Angeles, but it's 3 Latinos and an African-American dude from Kansas City, and we make music that represents our identity. So it's in English and Spanish, and a lot of times people put us in an activist kind of role, but I don't know if we intended to do that. We just are telling the stories of our realities. And when you say that stuff out loud, people go, wow, that sounds kind of political or social. It's like, that's just no, it's just the realities of the families and our friends. They have issues with immigration and they have issues with these other things. So that work has also spawned with the other hat that I wear, where I have founded a not-for-profit called Art as Mentorship. But it was built off of the work that the band did 9 years ago. We started a music camp partnering with the Mattie Rhodes Center. And every year we do this 1 week summer camp. And people would say, what else could we do? What could we do more? 1 week isn't enough. My young person, my student, my son is really excited about music. And finally I bit the bullet and I said, all right, I'm going to figure out how and what we can do to grow this work. So I am a leader of an arts organization by way of having been a band that wanted to impact young people in our communities and in our neighborhoods. We started that music camp in the historic Northeast here in Kansas City. The shift happened when I actually was talking to a friend, Bo Bledsoe, who runs a not-for-profit, Ensemble Iberica, and I was telling him all the things we're doing. He's like, man, that just keeps sounding like you run an organization, but you're not running one. And it dawned on me that we would throw these kind of one-off events that were really cool and had an impact. We did a young songwriter workshop with this woman, Olinda Segarra. She's a Nuyorican from the Bronx, but has found some fame and success in a band called Hooray for the Riff Raff. And she did a songwriting workshop and 20 young songwriters showed up and they were so inspired. But then there was no organization to follow up and to keep those kids motivated. There wasn't a curriculum. There wasn't a program. There wasn't a next week. And we had just done that for a couple of years where we realized, all right, that's a waste of energy. We got to take the time to build out this organization.
My name is Yvonne Medrano. I am currently a 4th grade online academy teacher within the Lee Summit School District.
And Yvonne, why are you an educator?
So I've asked myself that a lot this school year, and I'm sure all educators have done that. And it's not just because of what COVID has done to our country and the education system, but really like our political climate and looking at social injustices and inequities. I've asked myself, why are you still doing this? And I think it comes down to the core belief that I feel everyone has a desire to learn. It's like a natural desire to want to learn something. And whether that's to read or to write like we do in school, or to cook or to sing or to dance, it's a journey of ours. And I choose to teach so I can be a part of that journey with students and often their families and the journey of learning. I mean, I have this job where I get to find ways to ignite students' minds to want to learn and to grow. And it's honestly what gets me up like every morning to have that opportunity to empower and to encourage like my students and their families and even my colleagues to be their best selves. And I just feel truly blessed to like have a career that I love. I love what I do for a living. I love that I have the opportunity to grow each day for myself, but from others. So I learn from my students every day. They amaze me every single day with their problem solving, their positivity, their willingness to just put themselves out there. And I learn from my colleagues, just sharing stories, whether it's in the classroom or out of the classroom, and having those connections. So I think it's just being able to go on this journey with students and families and staff in the journey of learning. So I love it.
I'm Jan Rogue, and I teach at Metropolitan Community College, Longview, and I'm an English teacher. I'm currently one of the board members for Kansas City Professional Development Council, which is a collective of 10 different colleges and universities, and we really work to empower other teachers. So just before this, I came from a meeting with that group, and we were, figuring out how to continue this strain as we move into our new paradigm, because we know that there's always going to be this access. And I see a lot of benefit that my students are getting, I'm getting, and we're working and trying to always communicate and create community. My mother's family is from Guanajuato, and she was born in the West Side in 1930. And so she grew up loving Guadalupe Parish. Even before Guadalupe Center had its big, beautiful building, amazing, they had the most incredible fiestas and they had the most wonderful events right there on the corner. And it was always this warm community that we would travel back to and visit. And then again, I always knew that we would travel from mom's neighborhood to dad's neighborhood by going through the 12th Street Bridge. So we would go underneath. That was the best because of all the big columns. And then we would come to Strawberry Hill and Polish Hill. And that was one of the communities that welcomed my father when he came as a refugee in 1951. So he survived, his mother survived, and my Aunt Bernice survived. But oh my gosh, I loved, and I still love, both of those communities. I think Kansas City is so rich because of the different neighborhoods. And while I don't want to crystallize anything in the past, I want to really value what those stories are. And so I start with that. And for me, a lot of times students say, well, you don't look Mexican. It's like, well, Mexicans look like a lot of different people. And someone says, I'm Mexican. And they're like, well, your name's not Mexican. It's like, it's not a name that makes you Mexican. And so we have these conversations. And then students will start to say, did you ever feel like your stories didn't count? And I said, oh yeah. Growing up, sometimes we learn what not to talk about. And it was always tacit. And then one of the best things that I can do when I'm with my students, first week of class, is say, I want to hear your stories. I want to hear where your mother's from and your father. And yeah, sure. So in your entire life, your family goes back 4 generations in Holden, Missouri. That's amazing. Tell us more about Holden. And so I wrote down just names of students this semester. I have Alicia, Maya, Briseda, Sylvester, Paula, Micaiah, Arshpreet, but we call him Sunny, Gracia, Lydia, Derek, Tyler, Rosemary, Roman, Kisan, Jasmine, Jalen, on and on. I mean, we have so many different students and such variety in our community and in our class that they start by telling their stories.
Okay, hello, my name is Lisette Cabra. I am a science and engineering teacher at Mendes Fundamental School in Santa Ana, California. My whole family are educators. My mother, my 3 sisters, my daughter, my son, my daughter-in-law, my niece, my nephew, like there's 15 of us. And we're at family parties, we're talking lesson plans. If anybody needs help, you just say, hey, I'm doing something on the rainforest, throw out ideas. So it's just who we are. Because I have been working very hard on bringing representation to my school site and my district for 26 years. To me, I was an English learner. I was a gifted learner, but they didn't realize that I was gifted because of my lack of understanding English. And so I don't think I really received the support and services I could have benefited from. I was also a teen mother, and teen mother school is, you go from calculus at the high school to, you know, your math classes, how many scoops go into a baby bottle. So a couple of times my education was almost robbed from me. So I really am an advocate for students and teachers. In my district, back in 1999, I became the very first middle school engineering teacher in our district because I pushed really hard for a club to become a class. I've now been an engineering teacher since 1999. I have been department chair for science, and when NGSS came out, I worked very hard to work with our school and our district to bring in professional development, to write curriculum. I worked at the county level. I was our lead STEM practitioner for the district for more than 3 years to make sure that we could bring the correct amount of resources A lot of people don't realize that science and engineering, those are my passions, so I'm going to talk about that a lot. But science and engineering, you can't read it just in a book. It has to be able to be done. And my students, I will say they thrive. I have been a very strong advocate. I've been on the superintendent's council to let them come up with list of supplies and amount of money that should be allocated per school site, per student. I worked very hard to make sure every teacher in our department has gone to multiple professional developments. I've presented at California Science Teachers Conferences and California Alliance of the Gifted conferences to really let teachers out there have access to the new standards and how we can really teach these standards to our English learners. And I sometimes think that, my population in Santa Ana is like 99.9% English learner or Latino. And a lot of times people just think we'll just give them easy things or, give them an easy level book and that's all they need. And that's not what our kids need. They need rigor with scaffolds. So what I do really work on is things like I'm a NASA Airborne Astronomy ambassador. My daughter and I were the first Latina team to fly on the Stratospheric Observatory for astronomy. And they just discovered water on the moon. So we flew in 2017 and we had to study for 2 years, college level astronomy stuff. Not easy after being out of college for a long time. My daughter, who was that baby I had as a 17-year-old, teaches 5 doors down from me. She's now department chair, science teacher. She's amazing in her own right. Not only did we fly with NASA, but we've also coordinated a Saturday Academy, a STEAM Academy just for English learners. Our students participated in the Student Space Flights for Experiments program, where they wrote proposals where astronauts on the space station followed our students' experiment, and our experiment flew on the space station. They studied hyaluronic acid and how it absorbs water, because a lot of times astronauts get itchy. And then we flew them. We wrote a grant. We got a $23,000 grant, and we flew our 4 little 6th graders to Washington, D.C. They presented at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. They were the only English learners in the whole program. And I had teachers coming up to me from Texas and from Alabama saying, we have, full on English speaking students that struggle with this. How did you do this with English learners? And we worked hard. We were there every Saturday. We had over 100 kids showing up Saturday, no letter grade, nothing, just because of the joy of learning.
My name is Nicholas Collins. I am a science teacher at Lincoln College Preparatory Academy Middle School. I decided to become an educator because I really wanted to find a way to give back to my community. And when I looked around and I really thought about those people who had made the biggest impact, it was the teachers, especially at Harmon High School. And I think back, and at the time when I was wanting to become an educator, about how much of an impact they had made on my life. And so when I put into this idea of wanting to make a difference in my community, the first thing that popped into my head was being a teacher. Representation is important because when you walk into an elementary school and you have, like for KCMO, for example, and you have the statistics that 30 to 40% of your population is Hispanic, but then you only have 1 or 2 Hispanic teachers. What type of message is that sending? Representation matters because it hasn't mattered. It's like you see what the world has become in terms of who the loud voices are, and you have a lot of non-Hispanic or non-Latinos speaking for Latinos, and it's just mind-boggling. And you're like, well, why is it like this? Well, if you really look at it, it starts in education. If you don't have that representation in schools, that is the mindset that gets fixed in kids as they become adults. It's all about the message that you send. And it's about accepting the role of being a role model. And, telling, and especially where I work, in Lincoln, LC PAMS, there are a lot of African American males, Hispanic males. It's a large population here, and I want them to see that if you really put your mind to it, you can achieve anything. And and one of the things I really push as a science teacher is that it's all about evidence. So evidence is all about observing and about really taking what you are able to see, to feel, to hear, and putting it into perspective. And so if you are able to see and hear a male teacher and see what they are able to tell you, what they are able to teach you, then that becomes ingrained in your own mindset that you can do it. And when we talk, and like I said, with that evidence-based thinking, you have the evidence. It's not something you hear on TV. It's not some political tagline. It's evidence that you can take with you. And in science, there is no better evidence than the evidence that is put before you and you can witness firsthand.
Pues I'm Salvador Gavalda, and I'm a high school science teacher, mainly chemistry, in Wyandotte High School in KCKPS, USD 500. My mom was a teacher. My dad, he was a minister, but he had done teaching, and it's very related. But I really like working with youth, especially high school. I had a lot of experience with that when I was younger. I did graduate school, so I taught in college a little bit, to mostly the freshmen, which are not so different from high schoolers. Not at all. But I really like the environment, the opportunity of learning, that process of learning, and I feel like there's a lot of opportunities where you learn as you teach, and I find it very interesting. Sometimes it's a little frustrating. Sometimes I have to look back and think, but I generally enjoy it. I enjoy that process of looking what are new ways of getting this information, stuff students come up with, and I'm like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that? This is a much better way of teaching this or looking at this. I feel it helps me learn a lot. It also, I feel, gives the opportunity to help students learn and to share the experience I've had in college and graduate work with them in their class. I think some of the positives are, I think one of them especially is Spanish is my first language. So a lot of the students I have parents who speak Spanish. So primarily, so communicating with parents is a lot easier. And it's also, that communication is a lot softer because I can go and have a real conversation of how is your family doing? How are you? How are your circumstances? Before we start talking about the kids' grades, right? And so that family connection is a little bit easier. And we all understand each other. I didn't answer the phone the last 3 times, but today I answered it because I felt like it. Yeah, we're all the same. We understand, that aspect. I think it helps with the students. It helps because sometimes it's easier to switch language and just talk about this and then go, well, this is how we say it in English and we'll try to do it. But if you don't understand this language, you don't understand it in this language now. I also sometimes have problems with words I've read and I say them wrong because I've read them, I haven't heard them very often. So I'm very clear about that, especially with students who don't speak Spanish. I'm very clear, like, sometimes if you see a phrase or something you don't understand, just tell me because I just started in Spanish and I said it in English. So I let students know that I struggle with that sometimes. I think also you have that opportunity to look for things that you've seen in your culture related to food or to way you do things, especially in science, different things, and you can add those into the class. And so you can bring that, like, here's something you haven't seen. How about you show me something I haven't seen? And we can bring those those connections together. You learn to be a lot more flexible because, like, I understand a lot of problems that we had growing up with education on the island, and then I see it here and I'm like, oh, these problems are similar. I know where I have to bend a little bit so the student can come back into the fold and we can work through that. I think those things are very positive relationship wise, and also the freedom for the student to be able to say, yeah, okay, today I need to talk a little bit more Spanish, right?
Yeah, my name is Sebastien Barraza. I work at the Kaufman School, UNKS, Marian Kaufman School in Kansas City, and I'm a 6th grade teacher, formerly fitness teacher at Kaufman. I had a lot of really good teachers coming up, and that I didn't realize were good teachers until after I had already left their space. But then you see the impact that they've had on your life and on how things have progressed. Especially from the outside looking in, you can really see what the work of a good teacher does in somebody's life. So I was in college, and I was doing a coaching program through one of my classes, and it was really big. It had a really big impact on me because I got to work with kids that looked like me and sounded like me, but didn't come from the same spaces that I came in. I had a pretty privileged education that I didn't realize was privileged until I was in the space to teach kids, and it kind of gave me like a perspective of like, okay, maybe what I experienced is not the norm, especially for people that look and sound like me, and maybe I need to do something that. Maybe I need to actually dedicate my time and my life to something like that. I don't really know very many teachers or even coaches that look or more specifically sound like me. Not just on the language, but also on the accent. For a lot of Latinos and people of color, Latinas too, and other people of color, it's hard to go through the process of going to college and like being successful and doing this and that, and decide, well, okay, well, I guess my level of success is going to stop at being a teacher because there's a stigma that teaching is not a mark of success or whatever in society. And I think part of that is breaking that narrative, like breaking teaching is a point of success, and it's a point of pride. And you're doing something for people that look and sound like you, and people that have your roots and have your experiences. So I think it feels good, and specifically as a male teacher of color, there's not many of us, so the effect is multiplied, and it's exponentially multiplied. So I think it's really important, and it feels good to be part of it.